Alright, here we are with this last one from our trig review, just finishing it up. So, once again, remember, we talk about our parent graph, because that's what it's all based off of, and we start at 0, then pi halves, 90 degrees, then pi, 180, 3 pi halves, 270 degrees, and 2 pi, 360. And for cosine, remember, we start, because of that unit circle, a 0, and where we end is the same thing, because that's 0 and 360, they're coterminal angles, so the x value of there is 1. Okay, our amplitude. Then when we get to 180, it's negative 1, and when we hit 90 and 270, they're both zeros. So I go 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1. So there's our parent graph. But now we are dealing with some changes, right? So that parent graph has an amplitude of 1, a period of 2 pi, and the midline is 0. So looking at ours, our k is 2, so our midline is 2. So everything's going to be shifted up 2, right? So we're going to add 2 to everything. Our amplitude is 1/2. Okay. So we're going to subtract a 1/2 from here. Just on these three, right? Or I guess add a 1/2 because you're going up, and this one that's going down, we would subtract a 1/2. So we should be 3.5, right? Because if our midline goes up to 2. Okay, nope, that's not going to work, is it? I'm trying this is the first time I've done it this way, so I was trying to figure out how to do that. So no, here's what I need to do. This jumps up to become 2. Yeah. That turns into 2, and then we add the 1/2. So 2.5 would be where we start, and where we end, and where our middle is. Neg A would be, so 2.5, 2.5, and this would be 1.5, because down below would be 1.5. Now the problem is we don't know if these points are all going to stay because our period could change, right? So period of 3 for B would mean our period is 2 pi divided by 3, which is 2 pi thirds. Okay? So that's going to affect all of our stuff, right? So we still start at 0, but now we're going to start at 2 pi thirds. Okay? So what's halfway between 0 and 2 pi thirds? Okay, well, if we cut 2 pi thirds in half, that would be like what, dividing it by 2? Or dividing by 1/2? Nope, timesing by 1/2. If we cut it in half, we'd have 2 pi sixths, or that would reduce to pi thirds. Okay? Remember, pi thirds is like 60 degrees. Okay, so sometimes we have to adjust. I think we had a different problem like this. We have to adjust our thinking here, because that's 0 to pi, and we split it up into fourths. Well, we got to change that to thirds. So it would be a little past, a little past, a little more past, huh? So like right there and right there. So then we have 1, 2, 3. So this would be pi thirds. This would be 2 pi thirds. Okay, so that represents this and this piece. So we know we started here a 1/2, 2.5. So we're going to end up 2 pi thirds at a half. So we're really squishing this one, aren't we? So right about there. Then our middle piece, which would be a pi thirds, is going to come down to 1.5, right? So right about there. Then for these two pieces, we're going to cut that further in half. So this would be pi sixths, which is 30 degrees. This would be 3 pi sixths, which I believe is pi halves, right? Which would be, yeah, pi halves. So that one, they're still on the 0, or the midline, which would be 2. So that one's going to go right up here at 2, and then in between that right there at 2. On the midline, so we get that little guy just like that. So it's just going to keep going like that. But for us, we're good with just that much of it. So that one was kind of tough, right? So we took these and moved all of these ones in, right? We also shifted them all up by 2. So we moved them in, squished them to 2 pi thirds instead of 2 pi. Then we bumped them up 2, and that took into account our amplitude. And that's our point. So there we go. So it's pretty important that on your notes, here's a suggestion for your notes. Okay, you need that chart with the sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, with all the degrees and all the radians, and it tells us what each one is. Okay, you'll need that. You need the law of sines and cosines. You need the information about the y equals, well, that was a horrible y. Y equals a sine of bx plus k, and understanding how to get the amplitude, the midline shift, vertical shift, and how we use that b to find the period. You need to be able to tell those from an equation, whether it's sine or cosine. And then finally, it'd probably be a good idea to have maybe print off or draw one, have those 5 points and the parent graph for both cosine and sine. Okay, making sure you understand where those points are and doing that. With that, you should be able to rock this test, so make sure you got all that stuff.